You have a concealed carry permit from Florida. You drive to New York. You're carrying your gun. Concealed. Legal in Florida. Felony in New York. You get pulled over for speeding. Officer asks if you have any weapons. You say yes. You show your Florida permit. The officer says that's not valid here. You're arrested. Charged with criminal possession of a weapon. Mandatory minimum 3.5 years in prison. Your permit means nothing. Your Second Amendment right stopped at the state line. On January 9, 2025, Senator John Cornyn introduced a bill to fix this. S.65, the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2025. 44 Republican senators co-sponsored it. The House version, H.R. 38, was reported favorably out of the House Judiciary Committee on March 25, 2025, 18-9, along party lines. The bill would treat concealed carry permits like driver's licenses. If your state recognizes your right to carry concealed, every other state that allows concealed carry must recognize it too. No more patchwork of laws. No more felony charges for crossing state lines. But opponents say this destroys state sovereignty, forces states with strict standards to accept permits from states with no standards at all. The debate is raging, and it affects every concealed carry permit holder in America. Quick question before we continue. Are you subscribed yet? Because what I'm about to reveal is how pending federal legislation could either protect your Second Amendment rights across state lines or gut state gun laws depending on your perspective. Hit that subscribe button right now because this bill affects 21 million concealed carry permit holders and could fundamentally change gun regulation in America. Here's what's in the bill and why it matters. The Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act does two main things. First, it creates a federal framework for recognizing concealed carry permits across state lines. If you have a valid permit from your home state, you can carry concealed in any other state that allows its own residents to carry concealed. You must have a government-issued photo ID, you must not be prohibited by federal law from possessing a firearm, and you must follow the location restrictions of the state you're visiting. Can't carry in schools. Can't carry in courthouses. Whatever restrictions apply to residents apply to you, but the state cannot arrest you just for not having a locally issued permit. Second, it covers constitutional carry states. 29 states now have constitutional carry, also called permitless carry. You don't need a permit to carry concealed if you're legally allowed to possess a firearm. The bill says if your home state allows you to carry without a permit, you can carry in other states too, as long as those states allow concealed carry. The bill includes a severability clause. If any part is struck down by a court, the rest remains in effect. Now let's talk about the driver's license analogy. Supporters of the bill say this is just like driver's licenses. Every state recognizes driver's licenses from every other state. You get your license in California, you can drive in Texas, in New York, in Florida, everywhere. Even though licensing requirements differ slightly. Why? Because states voluntarily choose to recognize each other's licenses through interstate compacts. The full faith and credit clause of the Constitution encourages this. Article 4, Section 1. States should give full faith and credit to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of other states. Supporters say concealed carry permits should work the same way. Your Second Amendment right doesn't stop at the state line. If your state trusts you to carry, other states should too. But opponents say the analogy is flawed. Driver's license requirements are largely uniform across states. Minimum age, vision test, written test, road test. Driver's education, the standards are similar. That's why states voluntarily recognize each other's licenses. Concealed carry standards are not uniform. Some states require extensive training, background checks, mental health evaluations, fingerprinting, live fire testing, references. Others require nothing. Constitutional carry states have no permit at all. Forcing New York to accept a permitless carrier from Wyoming is not like accepting a Wyoming driver's license. The standards are vastly different. If you're finding this helpful so far, imagine what you'll learn in my next video, where I break down the specific state-by-state differences in concealed carry requirements and explain why those differences matter for public safety. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it. Now let's talk about who supports the bill. The National Shooting Sports Foundation, NSSF, strongly supports it. NSSF is the Firearm Industry Trade Association. They call it common sense legislation. Lawrence Keene, NSSF Senior Vice President and General Counsel, said this solves the problem of the confusing patchwork of laws surrounding concealed carry permits. He said laws make unwitting criminals out of legal permit holders for a simple mistake of a wrong traffic turn. The National Rifle Association supports it. John Comerford, NRA Executive Director, said this common sense solution remedies a confusing patchwork of state laws and ensures that your right to self-defense does not stop at the state line. Gun Owners of America supports it. Aiden Johnston, GOA Director of Federal Affairs, called this the greatest legislative victory for the gun rights movement in a century. 24 state attorneys general, all Republicans, wrote a letter supporting it. led by Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond. The letter said, law-abiding Americans have every right to protect themselves, and concealed carry can have substantial public safety benefits. Now let's talk about who opposes the bill. Everytown for Gun Safety strongly opposes it. Everytown is the largest gun violence prevention organization in America. They call it a federal concealed carry mandate, not reciprocity, mandate. They say it would force each state to allow people from other states to carry hidden loaded guns in public, even in states that wouldn't otherwise let them. Override common-sense state gun laws, make it more difficult for police to enforce local gun safety laws, and jeopardize public safety. The Newtown Action Alliance opposes it. They submitted a letter to the House Judiciary Committee. The National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence opposes it. They submitted a letter arguing the bill would endanger domestic violence survivors. Multiple law enforcement organizations oppose it. They worry about officer safety. If permits from all states are valid everywhere, officers can't know whether a person carrying is actually qualified under local standards. Now, quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. This bill is pending. It has not passed. We don't know if it will become law. If you're a concealed carry permit holder traveling across state lines, consult current laws in every state you enter. Don't assume reciprocity exists unless you've verified it. Hey, 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't be part of that group. Join the 50,000 people who stay informed about legislation that could change gun rights and gun regulations. Click subscribe. Now let's talk about the constitutional arguments. Supporters say the Second Amendment protects the right to keep and bear arms. Bear means carry. If you have a constitutional right to bear arms, that right doesn't disappear when you cross state lines. The Supreme Court's decision in District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008 recognized an individual right to keep and bear arms for self-defense. And in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin in 2022, the court said the right to carry a handgun for self-defense is part of the Second Amendment. States can regulate how people carry, but they can't deny the right entirely. Supporters say if the Second Amendment is a constitutional right, it should be enforceable nationwide, just like the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment. You don't lose your free speech rights when you cross state lines. Why should you lose your right to bear arms? Opponents say the 10th Amendment reserves to the states powers not delegated to the federal government. Regulating the carrying of concealed weapons has historically been a state police power. States have always set their own standards for who can carry, where they can carry, and under what conditions. The Supreme Court in Bruin recognized that states can impose reasonable regulations. This bill doesn't respect that. It federalizes concealed carry standards, forces states to accept permits they would never issue themselves. That violates state sovereignty. And opponents cite McDonald versus City of Chicago from 2010. The court said the Second Amendment applies to the states, but it doesn't mean states can't regulate. The court has never said states must recognize out-of-state permits. Now let's talk about the practical effects. If this bill becomes law, here's what changes. First, permit holders can carry in more states. Right now, reciprocity agreements are a patchwork. Some states recognize permits from many states, others from few. Kansas permit holders can currently carry in 39 other states, but not in New York, California, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Hawaii, or a few others. If this bill passes, Kansas permit holders could carry in all 50 states as long as those states allow their own residents to carry concealed. Second, permitless carriers from constitutional carry states could carry in permit-required states. Someone from Texas, which has constitutional carry, could carry in Illinois, which requires a permit. As long as the Texas resident is legally allowed to possess a firearm under federal law, Illinois couldn't arrest them for not having an Illinois permit. Third, states with strict permitting requirements lose control. New York requires 18 hours of training, a background check, references, good moral character determination, in-person interview. New York would have to accept someone from a constitutional carry state with no training, no background check, no interview, nothing. Opponents argue this jeopardizes public safety. States with permitless carry have seen increases in gun violence. A study found that in states that repealed strong permit requirements, gun assaults increased by 32%. Forcing strict states to accept permitless carriers imports that risk. Supporters argue this protects law-abiding citizens. The vast majority of concealed carry permit holders never commit crimes. They're statistically more law-abiding than the general population. And people carrying for self-defense make communities safer, not more dangerous. This information could literally determine whether you face felony charges for carrying across state lines or whether you can exercise your Second Amendment rights nationwide. Subscribe now because my next video will explain exactly what to do if you're stopped by police while carrying under reciprocity and how to protect yourself legally. Hit that subscribe button. Now let's talk about the legislative process. S.65 was introduced in the Senate on January 9, 2025. It was referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's still there, no hearing scheduled yet. H.R. 38 was introduced in the House on January 3, 2025. It was referred to the House Judiciary Committee. On March 25, 2025, the committee held a markup. The bill was reported favorably to the House, as amended, by a vote of 18-9, along party lines. All Republicans voted yes. All Democrats voted no. The bill now goes to the House floor for a vote. If it passes the House, it goes to the Senate. If the Senate passes it, it goes to the President. President Trump has expressed support for concealed carry reciprocity. If he signs it, it becomes law. But there are obstacles. In the Senate, Democrats could filibuster. You need 60 votes to overcome a filibuster. Republicans have 53 seats. They'd need 7 Democrats to vote for cloture. That's unlikely. Democrats oppose the bill. So the bill might not pass the Senate, unless Republicans use budget reconciliation, or unless they eliminate the filibuster. Both are possible but controversial. The House vote is expected soon, possibly within weeks. Watch for it. If it passes the House, pressure shifts to the Senate. Now let's address the Everytown arguments in detail. Everytown says the driver's license analogy is misleading. To get a driver's license, you need to be a certain age, complete driver's education, pass a vision test, a written test, and a road test. Requirements are largely the same across all 50 states. That's why states voluntarily recognize each other's licenses. But concealed carry requirements vary wildly. Some states require training, others don't. Some require background checks beyond federal law. Others rely only on the federal check. Some have mental health screening. Others don't. Some require live fire testing. Others don't. Everytown argues that forcing all states to recognize all permits, including from states with no permits at all, is not reciprocity. It's a race to the bottom. The lowest common denominator becomes the national standard. Supporters respond that federal law already sets a floor. Prohibited persons can't carry under this bill. Felons, domestic abusers, people under restraining orders, they're still prohibited. The bill doesn't change that, and states can still set location restrictions. Schools, courthouses, government buildings. States retain control over where guns can be carried, just not who can carry. Everytown also argues the bill makes it harder for police to enforce gun laws. If an officer stops someone carrying in New York and the person has a Florida permit, the officer has to verify that the Florida permit is valid and that the person is carrying in a location where it's allowed. That's more complicated than just checking for a New York permit. Officers don't have instant access to databases for all 50 states' permit systems, and some constitutional carry states don't have permits at all. How does an officer verify someone from Alaska is legally carrying if Alaska doesn't issue permits? Supporters say this is solvable. Officers can check federal databases. They can call the person's home state. They can verify ID. It's not that different from checking out-of-state driver's licenses, which officers do every day. Look, I spend hours every week tracking pending gun legislation, analyzing the constitutional arguments on both sides, and explaining how these bills could change the legal landscape for gun owners. The least you can do is subscribe to make sure you don't miss updates when this bill moves forward. Subscribe right now, and if you found this helpful, share it with anyone who carries concealed because this bill affects every permit holder in America. Now let's talk about what happens if the bill becomes law and gets challenged in court. It will be challenged, guaranteed. States like New York, California, New Jersey, they'll sue. They'll argue it violates the 10th Amendment, violates state sovereignty, commandeers state resources, forces states to accept permits they would never issue. The case will go to federal court, probably multiple cases in multiple circuits. Eventually, the Supreme Court might take it up. And the court will have to decide whether Congress has the authority to do this. Congress might argue authority under the Commerce Clause. Guns are sold in interstate commerce. Carrying guns across state lines is interstate activity. Congress can regulate it. Or Congress might argue authority under Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. Congress can enforce the Second Amendment against the states. This bill enforces the right to bear arms. Courts will scrutinize those arguments. The Commerce Clause has limits. Just because something affects commerce doesn't mean Congress can regulate it, and Section 5 enforcement must be congruent and proportional to the constitutional violation. Is this bill? That's the question. The outcome is uncertain, but with the current Supreme Court, which has been sympathetic to Second Amendment claims, the bill might survive. Remember, this is educational information based on pending legislation S.65 and H.R. 38, the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act of 2025. S.65 is in the Senate Judiciary Committee. H.R. 38 was reported out of the House Judiciary Committee on March 25, 2025, and is awaiting a floor vote. This is not legal advice. This is analysis of pending federal legislation. The bill has not passed. If you carry concealed, know the current laws in every state you enter. Don't assume this bill is law. It's not. Yet. But it could be. And if it becomes law, it fundamentally changes concealed carry in America. Subscribe so you're ready when that happens. Because the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act isn't just about permits. It's about whether gun rights are national or local, whether the Second Amendment means the same thing in every state, or whether states can set their own standards. That affects every gun owner, every permit holder, and every state in America.